The sky. We look up, we see journeys beginning, connections being made. It's vast, it's usually routine.
Usually. But sometimes, unimaginably, that changes.
Yeah. June 12th, 2025. Over Ahmedabad, Gujarat. That routine shatter.
Completely. Air India Flight AI171,
Yeah.
a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, modern plane heading to London Gatwick.
A flight like any other, one you or I could easily be on.
And then, just moments after taking off from Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport,
Yeah.
it just fell.
Fell out of the sky. Plunged back.
The impact.
Yeah.
Instant. Devastating. It crashed right into the canteen area of a medical college hostel there in
That
Mangaluru.
hostel building. Oh, my
The
goodness.
fire, the force.
Hmm.
It was immediate. Hundreds of lives lost,
Yeah.
instantly making it India's deadliest single aircraft disaster.
Fresh hundreds. Just like that. Gone. Families just torn apart.
And, you know, as the news broke, those first horrific images,
Yeah.
for so many people, especially in India, there was this awful, chilling feeling like they'd seen this before.
Deja vu. That word came up a lot. Because it echoed Mangaluru, didn't it? 2010. Another Air India flight. Another tragedy.
Exactly. You feel the weight of that history, don't you? These aren't just statistics. They leave these deep, deep scars.
Right.
And beyond just the shock, there's so much to unpack. What actually happened second by second in Ahmedabad, the human stories buried in all this.
And the bigger questions, right? About safety, especially with India's aviation market growing so fast.
Absolutely critical questions.
So that's what we're trying to do today. We've sifted through the available material, the reports, the accounts, the details you've shared with us.
Trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah, we want to really dive into what happened that afternoon, explore those disturbing parallels with the past, look at the theories swirling around now.
And sort of place it in the bigger picture of flying in India today.
We're going to try and piece this together for you, understand the facts, but also why this one feels so significant, why it resonates so deeply.
Okay, so let's start with the flight itself. AI-171. It was Thursday afternoon, just after 1:38 p.m. local time, when it started its takeoff.
A Dreamliner, that's a big modern plane built for long flights.
That's right. 242 people on board, 230 passengers, 12 crew.
And quite a mix of people.
Yes, the manifest showed 169 Indian nationals, 53 Britons, 7 Portuguese, 1 Canadian. You know, families, students, business people.
Including a former chief minister of Gujarat, Vijay Rupani, quite a prominent figure, all heading for London.
All expecting a routine flight.
But something went wrong. Fast, almost right after getting airborne.
Terribly wrong.
Yeah.
The plane barely gained any altitude. Reports say about 825 feet. That's really low just after takeoff.
800 feet, and then?
Then a mayday call from the cockpit. That universal signal for extreme distress, a dire emergency.
The worst call a pilot can make.
And just seconds after that call, the aircraft pitched nose down and plunged.
Straight into that populated area, the medical college hostel.
Yeah, the BJ Medical College hostel canteen building took the direct hit.
Those first images, I mean, words almost fail you. Just a massive fireball, thick black smoke billowing up.
Visible for miles, apparently. Wreckage everywhere, on roads, in trees, actually embedded in the building itself.
That image of the plane's tail section just lodged on top of the burning hostel. Haunting.
Absolutely haunting. And the tragedy wasn't just on the plane. The loss of life on the ground. It adds another layer of just unbearable grief.
How many were lost in total, do we know?
Within the first 24 hours, authorities confirmed recovering over 269 bodies. Initial estimates were suggesting the total number, including those in the hostel, might go over 290.
Oh, heavens.
And inside the college, we know at least 5 medical students, a postgraduate doctor, and a doctor's wife were killed. 50 or 60 other students injured, some critically.
Just going about their day.
Exactly. The scene was so horrific, families had to provide DNA samples at Ahmedabad Civil Hospital just to identify their loved ones.
DNA samples. That detail really brings home the sheer destruction and the agony for those families waiting for news.
It does. And you hear stories like Thakur Ravi, a kitchen worker at the hostel.
I read about him. He'd just left to deliver lunches.
Yeah, he came back to that scene. He was frantically searching for his mother and his 2-year-old daughter who were inside. His voice was just breaking when he talked to reporters. Said the other cooks got out, but he couldn't find his family. It's just...
Heartbreaking doesn't even cover it.
It really doesn't. But amidst all that darkness, there was this one almost unbelievable story of survival from the plane itself.
The single survivor.
Yes. Ramesh Vishwaskumar. A 38-year-old British national, originally from India. He was apparently in seat 11A. right near an emergency exit.
And his account, even right after, face bloodied, clothes torn, gives you this terrifying window into those last moments.
He talked about hearing a huge noise maybe 30 seconds after takeoff, then
Yeah.
just seeing bodies everywhere.
The terror he must have felt.
He said he just got up and ran as fast as he could, debris falling all around him. He somehow managed to call his brother in England, just saying he had no idea how he was alive.
Incredible survival, but his brother.
Tragically, his brother Ajay was also on the flight. He's still listed among the missing. Ramesh's survival. It's incredibly rare. A statistical miracle, really, given the circumstances.
The whole world was watching, reacting, leaders offering condolences.
Yeah, the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, called it heartbreaking beyond words. Keir Starmer in the UK spoke of the devastating images. Even Donald Trump in the US offered condolences, though he did speculate about engine failure.
Right, though acknowledging it wasn't confirmed.
And Air India's owners, the Tata Group, moved quickly, pledging significant compensation euro crore to each victim's family. Pope Leo XIV, other world leaders, messages poured in.
Meanwhile, Ahmedabad's airport, run by the Adani Group, paused flights briefly, understandably.
Limited operations resumed fairly quickly, but yeah, a brief pause.
So, okay, the initial shock begins to wear off slightly, and the question just screams out, what happened? How does this happen?
That's the absolute focus now. The investigation. India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, the AIB, is leading it.
Working with Boeing, the US FAA, UK authorities.
Exactly. The manufacturer, the destination country, standard procedure, and immediately speculation started. What could cause such a catastrophic failure so quickly?
And one theory seems to be gaining traction early on.
Yes. The strongest initial theory, the one many aviation experts are pointing to, is a bird strike. A major one.
Birds, like multiple birds, enough to take down a Dreamliner. You mentioned the Hudson River landing.
Potentially, yes. Captain Mohan Ranganathan, a well-respected aviation safety consultant in India, he was very blunt about it.
What did he say?
He said, Ahmedabad Airport has a known, serious, long-standing issue with large numbers of birds. He claims he personally flagged this exact problem 17 years ago.
17 years ago.
That's what he claims. He links it partly to nearby slaughterhouses.
Mm-hmm.
He alleges they attract huge flocks, are owned by politically connected people, and despite the obvious risk, they've never been moved.
Wow. So if that's true, you're talking about a known hazard, potentially ignored for years, possibly due to political influence. That's alarming.
It raises serious questions, absolutely. Another former pilot, Captain C.S. Randhawa, agreed. He said a significant bird strike, especially large birds or a dense flock hitting both engines. It could potentially cause a dual-engine failure. Rare, but possible, like what happened with U.S. Airways Flight 1549 on the Hudson.
The miracle on the Hudson. But that was water. This was much worse.
Much worse outcome, yes. So bird strike is a leading theory. But investigators will be thorough. They'll also look at fuel contamination, maybe a control system jam, or some other kind of engine malfunction not related to birds.
I also saw something mentioned about the landing gear. Someone noticed it in videos.
Yes, Anthony Brickhouse, an aerospace safety expert in the U.S., he looked at footage of the plane's very brief climb and noted the landing gear seemed to still be down.
Which is unusual so soon after takeoff.
It can be. He raised it as something investigators absolutely need to clarify. Was it intentional by the crew for some reason? Was it a mistake? Or was there a mechanical fault preventing retraction? That could affect aerodynamics significantly right after liftoff.
So another piece of the puzzle.
Definitely. And India's Civil Aviation Ministry has already ordered Air India to inspect its whole 787 fleet, just as a precaution. They haven't grounded the planes, but they're clearly taking it seriously.
If it does turn out that warnings, like Captain Ranganathan's alleged warning about birds, went unheeded for years, especially with that hint of political influence, it really makes you wonder about safety priorities.
It forces you to look at the bigger system, yes. And speaking of warnings and those chilling parallels, this whole event immediately took one man back to another awful day.
Who was that?
Gopal Hosur. He's a retired senior police officer from Karnataka. He was taken straight back to May 22nd, 2010.
Ah, Mangaluru. Air India Express Flight IX812.
Exactly. Hosur was the Inspector General of Police for the Western Range then. He was one of the very first responders at the Mangaluru crash site.
Another Air India flight, another international route. Massive loss of life. But that one was on landing, right? Not takeoff.
Correct. A Boeing 737 coming in from Dubai. 158 people died out of 166 on board. Hosur described getting the call, rushing to the site. Mangaluru's airport is famous, or infamous, for its tabletop runway.
Built on a hill with steep drops.
Precisely. A plateau with sharp drops, including a 100-foot gorge at the end. He got there to find the plane had overshot the runway, plunged down into that gorge, and was just engulfed in flames.
What went wrong?
The investigation found the pilots landed too far down the runway, not enough space left to stop. The first officer actually called for a go-around, abort the landing, try again, but the captain initiated it too late.
But some people survived Mangaluru. It seems impossible given that description.
It was almost miraculous. As the plane went over the edge, the right wing hit something near the runway. It tore a hole in the fuselage, and 8 passengers were literally thrown out onto the runway area before the plane fell into the gorge and burned. Those 8 survived.
Thrown clear. Unbelievable, the randomness of survival in these things.
It really underscores that razor-thin edge between life and death. Hosur pointed out that tabletop runways like Mangaluru's are inherently risky. They demand absolute precision on approach and touchdown because there's just no margin for error.
They exist elsewhere too, right? In hilly regions.
Yes, but they always require extra care, extra training. The 2010 Mangaluru crash did lead to reforms. Better pilot training for challenging approaches, runway safety improvements.
But Hauser's point maybe was that even with measures, things can still go wrong.
Exactly. And his other key point was the need for immediate, effective emergency response when they do go wrong. Time is absolutely critical in saving lives, he stressed.
Which brings us back to Ahmedabad, a different phase of flight, but the same need for answers and understanding the context.
Absolutely. And Ahmedabad, while now the deadliest single-plane crash in India, sits within a sad history. We have to remember the 1978 Air India crash off Mumbai instrument failure, 213 dead.
And the mid-air collision?
Charki Dadri, 1996. 2 planes collided, 349 lives lost. That had a higher death toll, but involved 2 aircraft.
There have been other crashes near airports too, haven't there? Even in Ahmedabad before.
Yes, ironically. 1988, an Indian Airlines flight crashed on approach to Ahmedabad, killing 133. That raised questions about local navigation systems back then.
And Bangalore, 1990. An Airbus A320.
Right, 92 killed in Bangalore. That led to reviews of A320 landing procedures. More recently, Kozhikode in 2020. Another Air India Express Boeing 737, another tabletop runway skidding off in monsoon rain. 21 died there.
So each tragedy prompts reviews, changes, hopefully improvements.
Historically, yes. They act as these incredibly painful catalysts for safety upgrades, policy shifts.
Yet here we are with Ahmedabad. It feels like there might still be gaps. Is it pilot error in those frantic seconds? Is it a hidden mechanical flaw in a modern plane? Or these external factors like the bird hazard theory?
That's exactly what the black boxes, the flight data recorder, and cockpit voice recorder are for. They've been recovered from the wreckage.
Thank goodness.
Yes. They're now being meticulously analyzed. They hold the raw data, the sounds, the conversations from the cockpit. They'll hopefully reveal the sequence of events, the crew's actions, their words. That's crucial.
But beyond the technical side, the machines, the procedures, the real weight is the human cost, isn't it?
Always. It's never just numbers. You hear the individual stories. Former Chief Minister Rupani going to see his daughter, a doctor couple with their 3 young kids. They took a selfie just before boarding, starting a new life. Gone.
2 sisters on holiday. A mother who just dropped her daughter off for studies. The first officer, Clive Kunder, just months from his wedding, apparently.
For families like Javed Ali Syeds, Ketan Shah visiting his sick father, Mahadev and Asha Pawar from Solapur. So many individual lives, stories, futures, just erased.
And the people on the ground, those young medical students in their college canteen, their whole lives ahead of them.
Just an unimaginable tragedy piled on tragedy. It's hard to grasp the sheer scale of that collective loss, the void left behind.
It really is.
But even in that, you do see these glimmers of, well, humanity, resilience.
Like Ramesh Vishwaskumar's survival, against all odds.
An incredible story, even with the sorrow for his brother. And the first responders, the firefighters, police, paramedics, the National Disaster Response Force teams.
Working in truly horrific conditions.
Tirelessly, pulling people from the wreckage, rescuing the injured, getting them help. Their bravery is remarkable.
India's Civil Aviation Minister was there, Ram Mohan Naidu. He called the scene deeply distressing, pledged support. Home Minister Amit Shah promised a full investigation.
TM Modi met with Ramesh, the survivor, and with Rupani's family too, trying to offer some personal comfort.
You see that essential human response. The courage, the resilience, the attempts to console pushing back against the enormity of the disaster.
It stands in such stark contrast.
This crash also inevitably puts a harsh spotlight on the bigger picture of aviation in India.
Doesn't it just? It's proudly the world's third largest aviation market and the fastest growing. But rapid growth sometimes comes with significant growing pains.
And this crash involved a Dreamliner, the 787. That's significant too, right?
Very. This is the first fatal crash involving a Boeing 787 since it started flying back in 2011. It's had a very good safety record overall.
So this is the first hull loss, where the plane is damaged beyond repair.
Correct. The first hull loss for the 787. That will be scrutinized intensely around the world. It could affect the aircraft's reputation, fairly or unfairly. Boeing has sent its own team to help the Indian investigation, which is standard.
And those potential environmental factors we talked about, the birds near Ahmedabad airport.
Yes, that highlights potential systemic issues that aren't just about the plane itself. If those slaughterhouses were attracting birds, and if they weren't moved because of political connections, as Captain Ranganathan alleged.
That raises huge questions about regulatory power and whether safety sometimes gets sidelined.
It does, and things like building height violations near airports, that's another ongoing concern that can impact safety margins.
Captain Ranganathan saying he warned about the birds 17 years ago. If true, that's a very powerful example of a potential long-term failure to act on a known risk.
A very stark example. And the existence of tricky airports like tabletop runways similar to Mangaluru's, that remains a challenge that needs constant management, especially as air traffic increases.
And then there's the human element again, the pilots. The black boxes will hopefully tell us more.
Captain Sumit Sabharwal reportedly had over 8,000 flight hours.
Mm.
First Officer Clive Kunder, over 1,100 hours. Experienced crew.
Yet something went catastrophically wrong in seconds. Was it a split-second decision under immense pressure? A mechanical failure they just couldn't fight? Or was it something external that set it all off?
It's likely a complex chain of events. Unraveling that chain is the investigator's difficult job.
So looking forward, what happens next?
Well, these investigations take time. Months, sometimes longer, to get final conclusions and make official recommendations.
But based on past crashes,
Based on history, especially in India, you can expect the findings to lead to changes. Renewed calls for tighter regulations? Definitely. Enhanced bird control measures around airports will be a huge focus.
maybe even forcing the relocation of hazards like those slaughterhouses if the link is proven.
Potentially, yes. Increased scrutiny of airport zoning laws, building compliance. They'll likely revisit lessons from past incidents too, like Mangaluru, maybe leading to more simulator training for critical phases like takeoff, reinforcing runway safety protocols.
But for the families, the healing process is just incredibly long. Compensation helps financially, maybe, but it can't fill the void.
Never. And as Gopal Hosur reminded us about Mangaluru, the first responders also carried burdens from what they witnessed. Invisible scars.
Yet their courage and Ramesh Vishwaskumar's survival, those are small lights in the darkness.
They are. As India's aviation sector absorbs this shock and works to rebuild trust, the focus absolutely has to be on honoring those lost by making sure the skies are genuinely safer.
So wrapping up this deep dive, we've looked at those terrible moments over Ahmedabad, the echoes from Mangaluru, the theories being investigated now, the broader context of India's growing aviation sector. It forces you to face some really tough realities.
You see the profound human cost, side by side with incredible resilience.
The official inquiries will continue, reforms will likely come, but for everyone touched by this, the families, the responders, the whole aviation community, the path forward is long.
It is a long road.
And reflecting on all this, thinking about the connections to past disasters, those potential unheeded warnings, the patterns we sometimes see, it leaves you with a pretty heavy question, doesn't it? What does it really take for the lessons to stick, for systemic changes to be not just made, but truly embedded and enforced? How do we make absolutely sure that the amazing progress in aviation technology and infrastructure is always matched by an unwavering commitment to safety, not just after a crash, but every single day to prevent the next one? It's a question that really hangs in the air now.